thank you so much for the Catherine's introduction. Actually, in Chinese way, I call myself as Peking, right? This is now reverse. And before my start of the presentation, I would like to thank RCC first, right? Thank you so much to give me this honor to be the fellow here. This is a great place. And I have learned a lot and also widened my vision. And actually, for my topic today, like climate change and economic development across Eurasia, this is based on my past work, including research and projects. As I introduced, right, I'm one of the members for the CRIS, with the Sam White here, and it is stand for climate change, reconstruction, and impacts from archives of society. And I'm also engaged in the environmental humanities, this group, right, in Switzerland with Philip Faure and Mark Paul. So all these past projects or experience support my studies and presentation today. And I have to say again, right, RCC is a great place. I have learned a lot, and especially I find that the scholar here, they have a very beautiful beginning for their research, right? For example, you can see, sometimes they discuss about the river and the landscape, right? And also the wetland, right? You can see the wetland and also birds, right? This is a very beautiful image, right? And how about mine, right? This is my way to do the research. It's quite a big contrast, right? The data and the data series, right? Maybe for me, I feel it is interesting, but not everybody in this room feel it is interesting, right? So, and for the geographer, right? What does the geographer do? Actually, geographer, we sometimes, right, find the geography, featuring as the magic, right? As the astronomy, right? Or theology, travel, writing, or regional planning, and so on, right? And for me, I also play some magic, right? But my magic is statistics, right? Statistics. So this is my way to do the research. And then, I just introduced the content of today's presentation, right? The background, research gap. This is the targets, I'm working on, and then methodology, results, discussion, and reference. And I have to say, for today's, presentation, I mainly focus on the concept, right? That is the environmental humanities, quantitative history, and scale, which has been introduced by Catherine. And I focus more on these three concepts, but not the statistical skills. And for more skills, for more details, or those statistical methods, you can go back to refer the articles I have published, and you can find more information from that. And today's presentation is only part of these articles. And then the first is the background. Okay, when we say climate change, sometimes we have quite a long-term visions about climate change, right? And according to these reconstructions, at least I show here is the 4,000 based on my past research. We can find that this is the current level, right? It is at least higher than past 4,000, right? It's quite high. And that means that for our human societies, we are under the risks, right? Maybe potential or already face some risks from those global warming. And then sometimes we say the history is the mirror of the future, right? And I don't mean to do some historical analysis to provide the implication for the future, but I just want to try to see some relationship between climate change and the social response in the past. And then based on the recent climate period, right? This is the most recent abnormal climate period in human history, that is called the Little Ice Age, right? So let's see, okay, how Little Ice Age, right, during this period, how climate impact our human society. And one of the milestone research for us, or I have involved, it is from this research. This research focuses on the causal relationship between climate change and the human crisis in Europe. But I'm not that satisfied with this research. I have 2 points not that satisfied. One is, you can see, the climate and the economy is not discussed, right, in a detailed way. The second is, this only focuses on Europe, right? This only focuses on Europe, but not China. Or how about China? Can we use the findings in Europe to understand China? or what's the difference between Europe and China, right? So under this background, I start my, two analyze or two points for the literature survey. The first one is the rationale about the climate change and the economy, right? How rational is this concept? Actually, this linkage, right, is particularly true in the past. When the Hungarian economy is sensitive to climate, and I think even for current society, right, in some place, agricultural production is still, right, highly dependent on climate conditions. And then for these relationships of climate change and the economy has been investigated, right, in several countries. For example, England, Poland, right, Germany, France, Russia, and so on. And also with short-term period. And then how about Europe and China? Okay, so let's see, this is the GDP comparisons. And you can find, okay, this is the GDP levels in the 1850, as the geographer, right? We prefer to discuss the problem by the map, right? You can see, this is the map by the GIS. And from this one, it clearly indicates that, generally speaking, Europe, right, generally is much higher than China. You can see, but China is only 600, but for Europe, right, almost about 1,000, right? And even for UK, you can see it is almost 4 times of China, right? And if we say that, the higher the GDP is, the higher the economic development is, right? And for Europe, right, during the Little Ice Age, we still find that climate change impacts, right, Europe a lot. So how about China? Maybe China even vulnerable, right, even more vulnerable to climate change, right? So this is some background and literature survey. So according to this background and literature survey, I identify several research gaps, right? The first one, I find that few research studies have been done, right, to quantitatively investigate the linkage between climate change and the Hungarian economy at a long-term and large spatial scale. And the second, I find a few studies have been quantitatively, compare the economic vulnerability of Europe and China. And the third one is, I find few studies have been done to constantly compare the role of temperature and the precipitation, right? For climate, we have so many climate factors: temperature, right, precipitation, wind, rainfall, right? So many factors. And for my studies, I just want to check how about temperature and precipitation. Maybe in the future, right, I will do some other research about other climate indicators. And the last but not least, I find a few studies have been done, right, to quantitatively evaluate the reliability of historical records, right, and especially for the statistical analysis, right. And this part is also belongs to the current project CRIS, right, about that one. And actually, we know the Europe and China, we are the two civilized centers, right. We have quite a long history. And we have a big amount of historical documents, right? And this big amount of historical documents can comparable to the big data ideas, right? Relatively, maybe not the exactly same, but similar, right? Under these ideas, I think whether we can use those amount of historical records for the statistical analysis. And then sometimes we say, maybe those records are not always accurate. But we still can use the statistical analysis, right, to get a general pattern, right, to get some ideas behind it. And I also think that, the integration of, quantitative analysis, right, could contribute to the interdisciplinary studies, right, in humanities or social science and other subjects. And I just let you know, okay, how is the, how look like those historical documents, right? Maybe this is for Europe, and this is for China. And for China, sometimes you have to pick one by one, and it is a demanding work. But for me, it's enjoyable, right? And then, based on the background and the literature review, okay, now I go to the research methodology. And the first one is just show, okay, what is the research period and what's the research area, right? For the Europe, I set the whole early modern Europe, 1500 to 1800. And for China, I set, the late imperial China, right? 1600 to 1900, right? And for the research area, I treat Europe as a whole and then China as a whole. And for geography, we so care about the concept of scale. I mean, actually for the scale, right, it is the starting point to recognize how our living planet has been, right, regard to the in the historical past. And especially at a larger scale, right, we find that it is more appropriate to resolve the complex relationship between nature and human. If we narrow down the scale, for example, to some local scale, right, maybe other social factors or economic factors will be more important, right, than climate factors, climate impact. At a small scale, maybe not that obvious. So this is why we so care about scale. And then we discuss scale further. For example, why we so care about scale and when the scale was born. Actually, the scale born from the cartography, right, that is map making, right? You can see this is a map of Germany, right? And where is Munich? You can see, this is Munich, right? And then if we see the Munich map, you can see the difference, right? The difference between. So based on these very early days, we have the idea that at a different scale, we may have different findings. If you want to do your research, you must stick your scale and set a scale for your research, right? And then, sometimes across scale we can compare, but across scale we have to be very cautious because the findings may be not the same, right? And then based on this one, okay, we go to the research area, as I mentioned, okay, for the I treat Europe as a whole and compare with China. You can see the size and also the population size, right, from these two regions account for 2/3 of historical world, and they are also the civilization center in the past. And okay, this is about the scale and then the methodology. I just go through it just to let you know what kind of method I have used. This is not the key point of the presentation. And then I just want to say one thing about the wavelet analysis, right? Because for the time series analysis, we have two big categories. One is the time domain, the other is the frequency domain. And for the wavelet analysis, this is about the frequency domain. That means it can tell you the story of long term and short term, right? Long term and short term. So it is a very useful method for me to examine how climate impacts the society in the long term and short term, right? And then after we discuss about the scales and some mathematical skills, right, there is another very practical and also another very big issue, that is climate. For current climate, if we see the weather, it is from the instrumental records, right? But we have no instrumental records during the study period I said. That means from 1500 to 1800 in Europe, we have no instrumental records. That's the same for China, right? At this moment, we need to reconstruct the temperature, right? So we can see this is the temperature I have reconstructed, as I showed you in the previous slides. And for that reconstructions, I have used different proxies, right? For example, documents, right, stagramite, lake sediment, tree ring pollen, and so on and so forth, right? And here, we have so many choices, right? At this moment, we may ask, which proxy is more suitable for our climate reconstruction? And then you can see, this is some, evaluation about those proxies. According to the scale of paleoclimatology, 300 years is not that long, actually. So at a relatively short period, we more care about the resolution. You can see for the paleoclimatology, sometimes the time span of those records can reach millions of years, right? But for the millions of years, the disadvantage is the resolution is not that good. So for the 300 years study period, our climate proxies should recover or should give us the information at the decadal scale or even the annual scale, right? So at this moment, right, I choose these first two historical records and the tree ring. They are at a very good resolution, and sometimes they can provide us the annual scale conditions about the climate and the weather. So that's why for my studies, right, I choose for Europe, right, these reconstructions is based on tree ring. And for China, mainly from the historical records, especially for precipitation. Now, this precipitation series is also reconstructed by myself according to the historical records. And then, this is the those economic indicators, right? And the population size, just to show you the where get those data. And then, after that, you can see when we have all these data, right? We just make it into data series. For Europe, you can see this is the Europe conditions and China, right? And but be careful, we do not start our calculations after we get data. We usually the first step is to observe, because if you cannot get some relationship based on the observation, maybe the calculation is only a data game, right, or number game. So at this moment, right, the first task for statistics is to observe. That is observation. This is not only important for statistical analysis, but also for geography. I think this is the same for historical analysis as well, right? We collect the evidence and then to see whether those evidence support our findings. And according to Europe, we can see this is the Little Ice Age. During the Little Ice Age, you can find the low temperature, right? And it corresponds to low grain yields and also low income, right? But the higher grain price and CPI, right? And this is the same for China. You can see the low temperature, it corresponds to the low GDP per capita, right? And then the higher rice price. You can see this is the observation. So it is rational, right? Because we know agrarian economy highly depends on the climate conditions. But here, I just want to say something about the GDP per capita. You can see this part. Now, the temperature is not that low, but why GDP per capita is very low here? I think the most possible explanation is the population increase. You can see, population increase here, sharply in the late Qing dynasty, right? So in this period, right, maybe GDP increase is slower than population increase. So that's why the population GDP per capita here decreased a lot, right? This is some explanations. And then, we just go to the analyze, right? Those numbers. I don't want to say much about numbers, but just to let you know, okay, what is the results? And all my stories are based on these numbers, right? And for Europe and for China, all these numbers. Okay, anyway, it's not important. The important part is how we interpret the numbers. Actually, for the geography or statistics, sometimes, right? When we have a number, this is only a very small step in the research. The most important step is how we interpret the numbers, right? How we interpret the numbers, right? Because we are not to show off the skills, right? We just want to use those numbers to tell some stories. So, I just list some interpretations on those major research results, right? The first one, from the scale test about climate change and the agrarian economy, we find that in the long term, right, in both China and Europe, climate change affect, right, agrarian economy in these two regions. But the difference is for China is more climate vulnerable because for the short term, climate also impact the agrarian economy. But for Europe, it is better, right? It is better. I mean, when we say yes or no, it is according to the results, whether it is significant or not, right? Significant or not. Now, this is a statistical criteria. If it is significant for both research methods, for example, correlation, gradual causality, right? All those methods, I say yes. If either one results, right, or if either one result from those methods, right, is not significant, I will put no. So this is the way to judge, okay, whether the linkage is reliable or not. So that's why you can see, in my presentations, I list actually 4 different methods because I try to use different methods, right, to guarantee the reliability of the results. Now this is for climate change and the agrarian economy. So from this one, you can see China is more vulnerable to climate change, right? And for the population, you can see this is the biggest difference between environmental humanity and the environmental determinism. Because for the environmental humanity, we include the environmental change as one factor, and we also consider other social and economic factors, right? And for the environmental determinism, right, it may not, right? It is too extreme. They only regard environment change or climate change as the only one driver right behind, right? This is the difference. And then, in our studies, we find that, as the one of most important factor, that's the population or people in the society. I find that in Europe, the productivity of labor is much higher than China. That means for Europe, they can produce more than they consume. But this is not the case for China. Right? Chinese people, sometimes they consume more than they produce. So you can see this is the reason I find that we have more family records in China. And then, according to the role of Europe, mainly as the producer, that means they can affect the agricultural output, in both short term and the long term. For the short term, we can buy the labor input. For the long term, according to the bottom-up series, we know that, under the population pressures, you can have some technological change, And I think, this kind of population must a group of people with higher productivity. Because for China, it's not the case, For China, we can see that for the GDP per capita, you can find population increase. We use up those GDP increase, make the average of GDP, decrease. And for China, you can see mainly acts as the demander, So for the demand side, in a certain period, we know it is stable. And only in the long term, when the population size increase or decrease, it can affect the economy later, So this is some, explanation behind. And then the last one is the climate indicators. In our study, we find that the temperature is more important or is more influential than precipitation, to both two regions. So that's why I think it can give us some hints that why we so care about global warming, the temperature part. I think this is also part of the reason, Temperature is more influential to agrarian economy, in the past. And then, this is some results. I have, introduced the results, and here is some discussions. I think my work, maybe some contributions, or some findings. I think my work first. I provide the environmental humanities or promote it, with some empirical support. And the second one is I try to include the quantitative analysis into history. Maybe it's not accepted or not, But I just try to bring these ideas into historical research. And then I think, sometimes we have a debate between history and geography, but I think the scale issues could be one to smooth the debate. Then I will discuss it further. For example, for environmental humanities, for the environmental humanities, we have so many definitions about that. But for our group, with Philip Fourier and Marco, we think that, environmental humanities, it offers ways to interpret our society from the perspective of environmental change. It interprets the social change against the environmental change. But we do not only regard environmental change as the only one explanation. Please remember, we think this is one of the explanation, but not the only one. And then, under these notions, environmental humanity, this is a quite European idea, Now, whether we can borrow these ideas and transplant it to the Chinese, and actually for China, we have another idea like the mandate of heaven. It's similar. Because for mandate of heaven, it also interprets the societal change against the climate change or weather change. For example, for the emperor, we call him as the son of the mandate, son of the heaven. This temple, this is the temple of heaven in Beijing, to worship the heaven. Now, what is heaven? Just the sky or climate, So we can see from these ideas, we can have some similar background or philosophies to interpret the environmental humanities. And under this background, now we can discuss something, knowledge. For example, great divergence. I think, for the great divergence, we have so many discussions from the social and economic perspective. Now, we also agree that, for example, population in China is less productive, And maybe we have to think about the other explanation from climate change. From the comparative analysis on China and Europe, we find that China is more vulnerable to climate change, And if you refer to the climate change in the past, climate is always changing. I would say climate is always changing. So in this case, maybe the climate change, exhausted China. So then make China, right, develop slower than Europe. So I think this could be one of the explanation from the environmental humanity, this perspective, right? And then the second one is context history. Actually, this is the most, the one has most debates, right? You know, I can see those debates, and sometimes I know, okay, how difficult it, right, to answer or respond to those debates. But I just give you some examples. Try to interpret quantitative history. Now I just borrow an example that is questionnaire. I think this one could help us to know what is quantitative history. Now, for example, the first concern on quantitative history is information loss in the data, or when we quantify the records into the numbers. Sometimes we may have information loss, right, during this process. Maybe for economy, it's fine, right? It is originally recorded in the number. But for some other phenomena, for example, the wars, right, migrations, right, or even other phenomena, we may have some information loss. But if we refer to questionnaire, right, we may also have some information loss, right? Because we just use one or two pieces of paper and to know your preference, right? It is also a kind of information loss. But for questionnaire, it only targets a research purpose, and then under this research purpose, it's designed questions like that. Shall we also accept the same idea? I don't want to say, I don't want to give the answer. I just raise the question here, and we can think. And the second concern is the general pattern and the special case. When we do the statistical analysis like that, for example, for my study, I just get some big idea, right? It's a general pattern. I didn't care about any country or any individuals or any event, right? So at this moment, there are some concerns about the general pattern and the special case. But this is the same for the questionnaire. For the questionnaire, sometimes when we interpret the questionnaire results, it is also a general pattern, right? And I'm sure that, right, not everybody agree with the final results, right? But it is just a general pattern. And then the third one is the quality and the quantity. For the questionnaire, I did some questionnaire study before because I try to interpret how the questionnaire is implemented, and I try to use it to for my research in quantitative histories. And then you can find that not everybody, right, during the questionnaire survey, right, they respond very carefully. And sometimes we have to remove those problematic response, right, out of these questionnaire pool. But you cannot check one piece by piece, because sometimes you don't know the problems at all. So at this moment, how we do that? The quantity. That means we try to increase the questionnaire pool, right? Just collect hundreds or even thousands of questionnaires, and use this way to guarantee the reliability of the research, right? So that's why I think, how about our quantitative history? So that's why I bring the idea of big data or big amount of historical, the records, right? And then the last one is the statistical method. Right? For this one, I think we have less debates, right? But for the first three, we have lots of debates, especially for the second, general pattern and individual case. And for this one, I think we can view this one or view this point from the scale. That means you can see for the general pattern, sometimes it is based on the statistical analysis, right? We generate some general patterns based on those larger amount of data or records. Sometimes we can see it is a kind of statistical law, right? But for the special case, right, we can say that they follow another idea. Maybe the inverse causality. That means they more focus on the particularism, right? That means some particular case, right? But behind these two, I think we have the scale, because they have different scales behind. First one, for the statistical law, it is maybe at a long-term scale or large spatial scale, right? But for the case study or for some special case, right, it has a small scale or some case study, right? So we can see we have different scales. So at different scales, right, we can know each other better between history and geography. So that's why I say I try to use these ideas, right, to bring a bridge, right, the conversation between history and geography. And sometimes, for geographers, we have the scale, and sometimes, but for us, we generally to look at the macro one, right, but not the micro one. So we can see this could be a way to bridge the conversation. So, generally speaking, right, this is the my work done, right, in the past. So in my presentations, I mainly target the concepts, right, more than the skills, right. The three concepts is the quantitative history, environmental humanities, and the scale, right. I treat these three concepts as the basis for my research, and I think another future directions of mine is the historical documents, right. This is why I engage in the CRIS, right, and I hope I can apply and also analyze those historical documents more effectively in the future. So that's all for my presentation, and here's the reference. And I try to support myself. And thank you so much for your attention. If you have any questions or comments, welcome. Thank you so much.